And welcome, folks, to the premiere episode of Animated Mullet. This is going to be a very, very short episode, giving you a bit of a taste of what is upcoming and a show that we've kind of wanted to be doing a long time ago. This is something that really, especially here at Lethal Mullet, we've always wanted to do something with anime. And anime is a big part of, obviously, pop culture from the 1980s, 90s, 2000s, still today. Anime, animation itself, and even the different merchandise that comes from it is such a huge part of everything that we know growing up through the 80s here in Australia. And of course, with my co-host that's going to be on the show, of course, Kyle Wagner. And we're going to be picking some shows that you probably haven't seen before or know of. We're going to go into the 90s to do some really obscure ones, some of the 1980s, and maybe even earlier the 1980s with the 70s as well. We're also going to be looking at some OVAs that you probably haven't heard of before, haven't seen. They're all very, very cool. We're going to be looking at things like, of course, Lensman, and of course, this one here, Space Adventure Cobra, one of my all-time favorite movies when it comes to animation. This is a real fun and cigar chomping series. It was fantastic. So we're going to look at that and probably even look at some of the newer versions of that is out there too. But Cobra is one of the cool ones. And the fact that we haven't seen a Hollywood film version of Cobra is, just absolutely nuts. That should have been happening by now. Of course, Lensman, one of my favorites as well. And the version that I've always seen was done by, of course, Carl Masick, known for, of course, working with Harmony Gold and Robotech. And there's actually quite a few actors in the voice department for Lensman that are on Robotech. So if you like that crowd, of course, we're big fans of that entire voice cast, in particular Richard Epcar and, of course, Ellen. Of course, Richard played so many characters in that show. Of course, Ben Dixon being one of the Veritech fighter pilot, friend of Rick Hunter's, and of course, wingmate to Max and Miriam. So there's that too. Obviously, we will touch on some pretty big animes out there too, like, of course, Voltron, Defender of the Universe. We'll be looking at that, but we'll be looking at Voltron through the lens of how we saw it out here. Voltron's an interesting one. So with Voltron, when that came out to Australia, it was on the ABC channel. ABC's like our BBC out here, government-run, paid and bought. And obviously they had a lot of BBC content. One of them being Doctor Who, of course, huge part of that lore. But they would have Doctor Who on at 5 o'clock. And then at 5:30, we would get some type of animated show. For many years, it was Star Blazers. Of course, that the English dub of Space Battleship Yamato, which was pretty cool. And as I've sort of talked about before, when we have done some anime shows, that is a pretty formative show. Especially even the live action that was done back in 2009. One of the better live actions too. Obviously, this bad boy here has Henry Cavill pumping out one very, very soon. Shot down the road here in Australia, right next to Movie World, of course. So Voltron's near and dear to my heart, of course. Big shout out to Greg and Mark over at Let's Voltron podcast over there, good pals of ours. And, of course, they get us heaps low down on this great, great series. For me, I saw Vehicle Voltron first, of course. That's Die Ruger, the original animation. But, Vehicle Force was the one I saw. And that ran for whatever it was, 6 months on ABC. And then eventually, obviously, we have this change to what we have here, Lion Force Voltron, which was the more popular, and it was definitely one that everyone sort of got right into and jumped into and really enjoyed. I liked it, always did, and I love the toys, obviously, Pinoche Place. The Japanese toys were probably even better. But at the same time, it was popular. And so I did get quite a few of the, I got the LJN toys, I think it was, my parents got me. and Santa Claus might have got. But great series. So yeah, we'll definitely look at that. Another one, it's probably a little bit more near and dear to my heart, and it's harder to remember. But if you jump on YouTube, you can see somebody, a great fan of this show, has actually upscaled the animation to near Blu-ray quality, and it is good, really good. And that is, of course, Thunderbirds 2086. It's a great series, which basically takes the Thunderbirds concept that we know, and of course that's the Jerry Anderson series, and pumped it into anime. And I think it's a dub from what I remember. I don't know enough about this series, to be honest. Only just what I've remembered. And the great thing is, I only just watched it a couple of weeks ago again, finally, in this new, beautiful, cleaned up version that somebody's taken the time to do. So we will definitely be covering this series because Kyle found that, and Kyle's like, hey man, this is definitely worth our time. So that's something we'll definitely be getting into for sure here. And of course, the one and only Animated Mullet. So yeah, we want to cover all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be, whether it's an American production, local out here. Well, not that they did a lot of animation out here in Australia in those times, but also looking at some of the big series, some Macross. Okay, we're talking about not the Robotech version. We're talking about, the original version of Macross. And of course, it's many sequels, which, Macross 2, which didn't have the original creators in there, Macross Plus, personal fave, and of course, Richard's on that. And a certain member of Breaking Bad, which just happens to be Richard Ipcar's neighbor, by the way. There you go. This is a little bit something you didn't know. So if Richard's listening, he knows who I'm talking about, because I'm sure they have cups of coffee every couple of mornings and catch up. But also there's some really good, stuff in there too with Macross 7 and all the many versions of that. You're going past that. Now, to be honest, I've really only watched Macross 7 in the series version. And I guess it's like an OVA. It's a video after that series. So I'm not really up on the newer series after that. But I can tell you, I love the mecha. The mecha coming out of that stuff is such an absolute gem. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And it puts a lot of the others to shame. Then we'll be looking at some of the original versions of Robotech, as in like what the mecha and stuff like that. And of course, the series that it came from. So we're going to be looking at Southern Cross, which I think doesn't get enough, love. And I personally love the mecha in that series. We're talking about, of course, the hover tank, the Spartus hover tank. I mean, it's awesome. It also, the Logan and the Ajax, the Auroran or Araran. Anyway, I'll figure out the proper Japanese term for that, and we'll check that out. There's one of the great things that Harmony Gold's done with, obviously, they're leading with, of course, Robotech. The great, with the schematic books and stuff like that, the history on all that sort of stuff. And it's great because you can see some of that original stuff in the animation model sheets and stuff like that too. It used to be in the Palladium books back in the day that they would have, versions of that too. They're from basically, versions of what was in the animated designs, concept work and stuff, and how those things transformed. But of course, I've got the Southern Cross one and the new generation, which is, of course, Genesis Climber Mospeeder. Now, that's the other series we're going to look at now. Again, like I said, looking at both Robotech as a whole, but also looking at what those series were like separately. And I've got to say, first of all, Southern Cross, the music's different. And if you like Peter Gabriel music, somehow I think it's Intruder, the song, might be in that soundtrack, or at least a version of that covered. And it sounds great because you get to see on the, the plains of the desert where we get to see those hover tanks going, and you've got that that drum beat, which of course has been done so well. It's covered by Primus as well, Les Claypool, Larry Lalonde and Herb, I should say, had done a very good version of that as well. And it's a great song. Go and check it out. Now, with that too, obviously it's a slightly different story. And this is what's interesting, seeing those original versions and the original intention of the writers. Genesis Climber Speeder is fantastic. Now, the Mecha in that series is up at a whole other notch as well. Again, I think they're just as good as each other in those three that were chosen for Robotech originally. And you have the lights of the Cyclone, Battle Armor, with the CVR3, all that sort of stuff. You've also got the Alpha and, of course, the Beta, or Beta Fighter, as Scott Bernard likes to say, or Stick Bernard, shall we say. And Legios. And it is awesome. I mean, that is the beauty of seeing that thing just light up when it's in Battleoid, and you get to see your soldier mode, and you get to see all the little flaps open up with the mini missile systems too. I mean, as a role player back in the day, that was one hell of a thing to play. So we're going to be looking at that. Of course, Kyle wants to look at one of the big ones, Gundam, and why not? Because Sydney Sweeney and the dude that's playing Rambo, Noah, I forget his last name, but they are about a town away right now, pumping out that film, all the live action work for that one too. Apparently there's a section of the Gundam itself that's being built, from what I've been told. And that's up near one of the airports up there in Toowoomba, which is up in the mountains, up near Brisbane. So that's happening too. So there's so much going on when it comes to anime and stuff. And at the end of the day, we're definitely hoping to cover more and more of it as we get along, because at the end of the day, we love mecha, and it's particularly the kaiju versus those huge Jaeger-like things, and Pacific Rim. But in this case, in the anime, it was just always done that way too, and done well.
Look at classic anime like Lensman.
These images invoke a sense of adventure and nostalgia for fans of 80s and 90s animation.
Classic series like the much-beloved Thundercats. Mecha anime like Robotech, Gundam, and everyone's fave, Voltron.
This is Animated Mullet, a tribute to these retro-futuristic animated styles.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a touch of what we're going to be doing. So yeah, Gundam obviously is a huge thing, and something I've collected over the years, and it is a great series. Now, Kyle is an absolute master of that, so he's going to be really looking at what that series does, and of course all the convoluted time frame and different universes of Gundam. I mean, there's just so many, folks. It's different. It's out there. I'm going to also be looking at Neon Genesis Evangelion. Ava, as we know it better. That's a great series. Rasafon, another one we'll be looking at too. That's a great one. When I was at art college, I get to see that thanks to a lecturer that said, you got to check out this new anime. And it was well worth it, of course. We'll be looking at some of the ones that are sort of doing the rounds on streaming too. One of them being, of course, Fist of the North Star. And I just happen to have a copy of the Gary Daniels live action as well. So we might tie that in together on an episode upcoming too of that as well, which I think is worth it. I mean, why not? Why not? If we're going to cover it, we may as well cover the whole thing too. And I mean, that was a great both anime and also a really good for what it was live action at the time. It was low budget. I mean, there's no getting around it. The late great Chris Penn is in that movie as well, from Best of the Best and Rush Hour and many other films. Reservoir Dogs as well too. So there's all of that too, all here coming on this show. And we can't wait to get into more and more of that. We'll also look at, of course, some classic American animation out there, and some of the great ones like Centurions. I think it's a great one. Mask, fantastic. We'll no doubt do a Transformers episode because Kyle's got his hands on, of course, brand new. Is it the 41st anniversary edition? I don't know, whatever you call it, but that new edition of the movie is out, and I believe even a new soundtrack. Stan Bush has recorded new tracks, basically new versions of The Touch. Yeah, that great song that we all know so well from that, And again, it's hard to, forget that, that's what they did back then, was they killed off so many big characters. I mean, they did it for a reason. They wanted to get more toys in the shelves. And we fell for it, didn't we? I think that's a big thing. We will talk about a lot of the merchandise. Definitely talking about He-Man, Masters of the Universe. Definitely from both the show and the collectibles and the original Mattel toy run. I think that's definitely something we'll look at as well down the line too. But, tell us too in the comments below what sort of series you like to watch and rewatch, and there's been some interesting ones I've looked at over the last probably 2 years. Just ones that have popped up. Obviously, like some of the ones we've mentioned today. But there's even old ones, which we've covered a few, harder ones to find, like Jason the Wheeled Warriors is one we'll definitely look at again. We've looked at originally on this too, and with Kyle. Kyle jumped on for that one. And we'll definitely look at some of the other ones. Like there was, I don't know what it's called, Skylanders, I think it was called. There was one pumped out by Kenner, of all things. There was something along those lines too. There's just some really interesting ones that popped up towards the end of the 80s. But I think most of the ones that I saw were in the mid to late 80s. But were really, really keen. Bionic 6, things like that too. But like I said, leave a comment below if you want to, me and of course Kyle will look at some of those other series and do a bit of a deep dive into XM Tech. You can catch us here on, of course, at the Wheel of Mullet on here on Facebook, and of course on Instagram and X, and of course on, is it Blue Sky? I can't even remember all these ones. There's a few. We're also on, is it TikTok? We're also on, of course, fbnet.poppy.com with all the many shows, and on YouTube too. You'll find these videos up there weekly as well. All on the one and the only Animated Mullet, folks. We'll catch you on the full show coming up very, very soon, where we talk about some of these great ones. Well, I hope to catch you there. And, of course, check out the podcast, fbnet.poppy.com. This is the Little Mullet, signing off.